Hi, good morning. Welcome to the Business Spotlight series. I'm here with Helen Forster from HTF Legal in Wetherby. How you doing, Helen?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, Mike?
Really good, thank you. Thanks very much for joining us today.
It's
So
a
if
pleasure.
you could start us off and just tell us a little bit more about who you are, what it is you do exactly, and how long you've been doing it for, please, Helen.
Absolutely. So my name's Helen Forster, obviously. I'm from a law firm based in Wetherby called HTF Legal. We're based in the Park Hill Business Centre over in Wetherby. If you Google that, it's going out towards Thorpe Arch. We have been going 4.5 years now, actually. And as you can probably tell by the name, it was set up by me, so it is my firm. Um, the reason for setting it up was because my line of work, I'm a lawyer for my sins, hence the name HTF Legal. And I specialise in a very specific area of law, which is to
Okay.
do with, and it's very grim, I'm afraid, it's your wills, your probate, your tax planning, which, of course, the joys of Rachel Reeves and budget at the moment has meant we've been quite busy with that sort of work. But also, we help vulnerable people in the community. So we act as what's called an attorney or deputy appointed by the court if people don't necessarily have family local and they need someone to help look after their affairs. And what we were finding was there was a bit of shall we say, a gap in providing that service and
Yeah.
educating people that it exists and how it works. And so the reason for setting it up became that we wanted to be able to provide that service, but also educate people in terms of what is out there and be part of that sort of community network. So for my sins, and I like to just say, Mike, that I'm 10 plus years qualified. I don't like to say exactly how many PQs because
10
let's
plus.
let's just leave it at the fact that I remember when inheritance tax used to step up, and that was frozen since 2008. And let's just leave it at that in terms of my
Yeah.
experience level.
Okay.
But yes, so we are a growing law firm, just providing these services and these services only. And
Yeah.
we like to say that because of that, we do what we do and we hopefully do it really well because we're not
Yeah.
then worrying about the other sort of areas. We will signpost those out to other firms if we needed to. In terms of the firm itself, so like I say, we've been going 4.5 years, and we currently have 5 full-time practitioners working 9 till 5. I like to say round the clock, I think, for some of us, but developing and sort of providing these services, whether that's going out to
Yeah.
people's homes because they might need it, whether it's doing the work actually here and having meetings here.
Yeah.
We are growing, and I don't say that this is a proper marketing plan, but we are at the moment all women. I think that's just testament to how the law's going more than anything else. But
Yeah.
we are growing as a firm. We're looking to take on another 3 to 4 people in the next sort of year, couple of years to expand that. So basically double the number of sort of fee earners and then the support staff behind that
Brilliant.
to again grow that helping in the community. Um, Sorry, you.
That's all right. I was going to say, so it's a growing business
Yes.
and 4 years and say looking at the next 4 years.
Mm.
What's your journey been like for the first 4 years, and how do you see it for the next 4 years as growing?
Yes. So, of course, you can probably tell when you track back to the year that I set this firm up. I set it up in the middle of COVID, which
Yes,
was
many people
probably a
did. Yeah.
very interesting time to set a business up. I think I had maybe a bit of a benefit from that that others might not think of because everyone thinks that must have been really hard. It was hard, but of course, the era of things becoming virtual had
Mhm.
come in really to the fore because of COVID. And so we sort of benefited from that because people were more tech savvy. They've had to learn, haven't they, to be more tech
Yeah.
savvy. So we've been able to use that sort of massive growth in technology and bring that into the firm. But it certainly has been a bit of a ride. I set it up as a sole director. I've got the pleasure to say that one of my colleagues has now become a director. So she's been promoted recently. But setting it up on your own and thinking this will be a great idea because I've got all these ideas and this is how I want it to be and I want to be able to help is brilliant.
Yeah.
The true reality of when that sets in of what you need to do, I think there's the two sort of things together. And I think I can quite happily admit that I was slightly naive when I set it up, thinking, right, I'm going to need an accountant and a bookkeeper, but that's probably about it, isn't it? And you forget
Yeah.
about all the other things that need to go into that. And so it's been a real education in terms of what actually is required and getting your plans together and having a strategy. I know a lot of people that I speak to that have been in this position have said to me, "Oh, we'll just see where it goes." And of course, that's not ideal because
Mhm.
yes, it might go in a different direction than you initially thought, but you've got to have that plan and work to something.
Yes.
Otherwise,
Focus.
yeah, but
Otherwise, it
it's
could be circular, and you keep repeating the same things, and the same things happen. Yeah.
that's it. Or you become what I like to call a busy fool because you're really busy
Yeah.
doing stuff, but you're not really getting the direction that you need. And so I think I can happily admit that I probably should have gone into it with a lot more information. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes that's where, certainly in COVID, compared to other times, there was a lack of that ability to get that. Um,
Yeah.
I was very fortunate in that I have some very good sort of accountants and things that pointed me in the right direction and sort of they went the extra mile for me. And I think that's very, very good. But
Yeah.
it's the eyes wide open before you do it. Make sure you've got your plans in place of how you see it growing and how are you going to achieve that? How are you going
Yeah.
to get to that next stage? You've got to have that plan.
Because your profession, it's quite an intensive profession in terms of the work that you do, and
Mm-hmm.
meeting clients, and court dates and things like that we were talking about
Yes.
off camera. So
Mm-hmm.
in terms of finding the time to do the strategy, how did you get to do that? What's been key for you?
Key for me, I think now is actually we do all have a danger, don't we? We fill our day up and we're always chasing our tail. I know a lot of businesses that do that, and we just say we just spend our day just. Some people describe it as firefighting, isn't it? You're just there doing
Yeah,
all these different
we
things.
hear that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, it is really dangerous to just fill your diary because that's doing work. What I've made sure that I'm now doing is I have time blocked out. I have a day a week completely blocked out when nothing goes in, deliberately to be able to work on the strategy, the what's working, what's not. And I make sure I keep it empty because, of course,
Yeah.
then there's a danger of just filling it in because I've got a gap. Oh, I'll just slot that in. And I know people do that too. But having that ability to just sit and stop. And I don't do it in the office either. I actually go away from the office environment. So I've not got anything
Brilliant.
here that's going to
Yeah.
disturb me. And I sit and I work that out. And that can be anywhere. It could be at home with two dogs, although I'd argue that's probably harder. It could be a cafe, a local cafe
Yeah.
just sat, but you need to have that space and that distance to be able to kind of look at it from a helicopter view, isn't it, of what's working,
Sure.
what's not, and making those honest decisions. And the other thing would be if there are hard decisions to make, you've got to make them. You've got to make
Yeah.
them. I know, again, I speak to a lot of people that have been in my scenario and things might not be working.
Mhm.
And instead of addressing it, they're thinking, oh, well, I'll just do more because, I don't want to have that difficult conversation with
Yeah.
someone. Or you've got to look at it from the business perspective of, is that working? Can we make it work? If
Yeah.
we can't, we're going to have to sit and have that conversation.
That's a brilliant share because a lot of us, we're all kind of, of a certain disposition, I suppose, where if a problem arises, sometimes it's easier to ignore it than it is. But the actual thing is, as we sort of profess here, and like you said,
Mm,
is lean into it and sort of recognize it, make difficult decisions. While they might
yeah,
be difficult in the moment, they're going to be longer term a much better option for you to deal with it in the shorter term than it is just to let them fester and kind of ignore them. And then 2 or 3 years later, it's still there and it's a lot bigger than what it was previously.
that's it. Exactly that. And I think that would be, it's not nice to do. And I'm not going to sit here and say I haven't had sleepless nights over those sorts of
Yeah,
decisions in the last 4 years. I think you will have sleepless nights setting up your own business anyway, because you start panicking, going, "What have I done? I did that in
yeah,
the first 3 months." But you start getting to that point where you have to understand that for the good of the business and what you're growing and
yeah,
what you're wanting to achieve, sometimes you're not going to get it right all the time, and sometimes you've got to address how that's going to get better, and whether that's recognizing you need somebody external to help you get a plan in place, how you're going to do that, or whether it's sort of being hands on heart. Look, I really wanted it to do this, but it's just not working.
yeah,
So I'll give an example of what I do. I'm actually, and this
yeah.
is really random, I'm qualified as I did a coroner's qualification. So I could assist people with the coronial side of things. And I thought, I'm going to become a coroner as well. And I realized that as much as I am able to explain to people how it works, that sort of trauma and the coronial court probably isn't where I should be right now. And I've had to make that decision. You know, I love doing it,
Yeah.
but I've got everything else going on here, and I can't expand it to that just yet. And it's those sorts of decisions to make, isn't it? I'd love to be doing that, but
Yeah.
just yet, maybe not. And it's those sorts of things where you've got to make the hard sort of line, isn't it? Of that it just can't take that direction.
Being business, it certainly is a platform for learning a lot about yourself as a business owner, if you're open-minded to kind of learn those lessons. So that kind of leads us on to the next question quite nicely, which is what's your biggest lesson that you've learned to date, Helen? If there's one that you can share, or expanding on, you know, some of the things you've touched on already.
Yeah, it probably would be. It's, you know, I think I would describe being a business owner as a roller coaster, isn't it? There are
Yeah.
times when it's going really well and you think, oh, fabulous, yeah. And then suddenly, you know, and it can happen within just 1 week, you have a good week, and 1 week you have a bad week, isn't it? And
Yeah.
it's up and down and up and down. I think my biggest lesson was on those down bits that everybody has. A lot of people would just go, oh, well, you know, they get, I'm sure a lot of people will mention this, you know, you get the things saying, oh, yeah, well, buy my business. And, oh, you know, you could easily walk away because it's so easy when it's so, you're thinking, oh, how on earth, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Why have I got this pressure? I don't need this. A lot of people might walk away. And I think the biggest lesson would be no matter how you're feeling in that particular moment, do not react. And it'll be on anything, really. I'm just using that as an example, but don't react that day. Don't just react to as a knee-jerk reaction to this has been a bad day or this is a bad situation. Sleep on it first. That was the biggest lesson I had, was if you start reacting instead of thinking it through, it
Yeah.
can sometimes the spin you might have on it because of the emotion that's involved just in that moment in time is possibly not the right thing or the right way to do it. So always sleep on it. Just always say, I'll come back tomorrow. I'll come
Great
back to
share.
you.
That's always the lesson in leadership as well, because as you become more accustomed to the ups and downs and picking that kind of middle way of just saying, okay, well, let's deal with the facts rather than the emotion of this situation, and let it settle, then, you know, that's a learning of a great leader to kind of understand what's going on without getting pulled in all directions and making knee-jerk decisions. And again, with your plans, making those plans, if you've got that plan, you say, well, I know where we're going, and this is just part of the the
Yeah,
roller coaster of getting there, because it's not always a straight, well, it rarely is a straight line. So I've not heard of
that's it.
business yet it's like that.
That's it.
That's
And
good.
never give up just on a bad day or a bad
Yeah,
week, but also, yeah, make sure that you're planning if it's going to have more than a bad week. How are we gonna sort that out?
awesome. So if you were to go back in time and kind of look at or reflect on what you know now, what would be
Mhm.
the best piece of advice you'd give to yourself just starting out at 18 for, I don't know, going into business or going into your
Yeah.
profession, things like anything you'd like to share in hindsight?
I think from my perspective, certainly in my industry, a lot of people will seek opportunities. They've got the work, and they'll just be blinkered on doing that work. Um, and things will land with them. Things like, well, do you want to come and speak at this event, or do you want to come to this? And for us, that's one of the things that I massively promote here. Is I make my staff do a lot of these sorts of things. We've set up a legal hub, for example, for a free advice clinic in Wetherby. And it's putting yourself out into outside your comfort zone, because everybody's really good at what they do, and we quite like doing that, and that's safe. The advice I would be giving is always push yourself out of that comfort zone. I've always said try an opportunity, never say no, explore it, because you never know where it comes from. So my for example, part of what I do now is I train not just solicitors, but I do a night class at Rossett's in Harrogate, Rossett Adult Learning. And I train people across the country. I speak at conferences.
Yeah.
And I'm part of committees being able to actually make real change in the legal industry. And I never thought in a million years I'd get to that. And the reason why I have is because when these sort of opportunities have landed, I've gone, yeah, okay, let's see where that goes. Let's look at
Yeah.
what that does. And so I would genuinely say it's explore every opportunity, because sometimes it might not be what you thought you'd do, but it might open the door to achieve what your business plan might be. Mine, as I mentioned before, was helping the vulnerable in the community. I'm able to do that now because I'm able to have this hub. They can come to us and I can signpost them to numerous other support networks if necessary. And so it's having that ability to acknowledge there's things that we're not going to like, and they might be scary, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do them. And I think a lot of people don't do that because they just go, no, I'm not doing that. I'll just do this bit that I'm comfortable with. And if you do that, you'll never grow.
So you'll never experience life in its true kind of form, really.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
what you mentioned about helping the vulnerable and now being able to do that with the business. So what inspires you to do what you do, Helen? Is that, I'm assuming that's part of it, and but yeah, in kind of your own words, what makes you kind of want to get out of bed of the morning and keep on going and
That's it.
inspiring
I
others?
mean, from my perspective, when I was starting off in the legal industry, I can selfishly say it's because I like to know the far end of everything, Mike. And I used to hate it when people would come and ask me a question and I didn't know the answer. And so a lot of my education through being a solicitor, becoming a trust and estate practitioner, so I did all these extra qualifications, was mainly because I don't want to be that person that doesn't know it. That was genuinely a selfish part of getting to, I suppose, the experience level that I then had.
Okay.
But what I really wanted to then do was make sure everyone else understood what this was. And I found that through work with just companies like Age UK, for example, what I was finding was individuals, and it can be anybody, whether or not it's older, whether or not it's somebody who's younger, but they're thrown into these legal things like being an executor for your mum or dad, and they have no clue what they need to do and why. And so the reason why I really do what I do is I want to make sure that people understand their options and they understand what it actually all means. So, for
Yeah.
example, all this that you've heard about Rachel Reeves' budget with inheritance tax being frozen and all the implications, well, yes, but it might not impact everybody. But everyone panics about it. And it's so what drives me is really that education of making sure people know what
Yeah.
it all means. Whether or not they then want to do anything about it. There might be some cases where they don't need to. There might be some cases where they might want to look at options. Well, that's what we're here for. It's that educational side. And like I say, that's why we've got a free hub that we run. We also work with a lot of companies like Wetherby Food Bank. We've just been at a big organisation event with them as well to try and promote helping vulnerable in society. We also have free services where you can come have an initial consultation, so we can just point you in the right direction. Doesn't
Wow.
mean that you have to then do anything with it, but it's more just making sure people know.
Yeah.
The
That's
other thing
good.
that we've actually done, and this is slightly off topic, but just again to explain why it drives me, is a lot of people try and do these things themselves, don't they? You know, they'll have a will. I'm sure we all know what a will is. And
Yeah.
they'll have written that maybe themselves, and that's absolutely fine. They can do that. Or they might have had a professional do it, but let's face it, legal jargon isn't easy. And so they're trying to then deal with these because their loved ones died and they've got all the emotion going on. And from a personal perspective, I lost my mother not that long ago, and I know how difficult it is when you've got all of that as well. And they don't really understand what the will says. And so we've actually got an interpretation service. So you don't have to use us to actually deal with the legal work, but we actually have a service that you can come as an executor, you can have a will, and we'll tell you what it means in English. I think
Yeah.
it's that sort of thing that drives us, I think, is that sort of making sure people know what it is that they need.
Yeah.
Um, and it's much harder nowadays because families are a bit different. We've got blended families. We've got all of these things where people are going, I don't know what this means.
Yeah.
And so from a legal perspective, that's what we do. But also it does mean, like I say, I do go out and lecture and train an
Yeah.
awful lot to make sure we do that.
Helping people. Well, it's kind of we start out, don't we, where in a selfish way, as you say. I don't mean that in a sort of negative context, but in a way of, I want to find out these things and I need
Mm,
to learn, and I need to kind of, I suppose, nourish myself with kind of experience and understanding.
mm,
But then once we've got that, we can then help others with our newfound learning and our interpretation of what we found, and that's kind of how it works, I guess. So
yeah,
nice reflection on that. So thank
yeah.
you again for that share. And then lastly, you've kind of mentioned a few things there about,
Mm,
what you do, what you're up to. If there's any
mhm.
of the latest news, or even if it's a case of sharing your website where people can go and find out about these opportunities to understand their wills, or get
Mhm.
some interpretations of situations that they're going through that they might not understand, and access your help, where can they do that?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of ways that they can do that. You can go onto our website, which is www.htf-legal.co.uk, and that's got a lot of information in terms of what these sorts of things that I'm speaking about with the legal issues are. We have a lot of blogs on there as well about the latest updates, because whilst I know
Yeah.
a lot of your listeners won't know this yet, but there's a lot of reforms due to come in from the Law Commission in terms of making wills. They're talking about electronic wills coming in. So there's going to be changes in how people can access this later. And so we're keeping it up to date with those.
Mhm.
We also have the Legal Hub, which is a free hub that anyone can come to in Wetherby, and it's on the third Thursday of every month. So you'll be able to access that. How you can book into that is a couple of ways. You can just contact us and we'll tell you when it's going to be. The town hall in Wetherby it's held in, they'll also do that too. Um, for those of the people that are kind of local to Wetherby, what you'll find is we have a Wetherby guide, an app, and that tells you everything about the local things that are going on. And so what's on there, the hub is on there as well. So you'll be able to access that. And you can come for free for anything, and we'll help point in the right direction too. So lots of different ways that you can get in contact with us. Obviously, Google and pick up the phone as well. We're always here. But it's
Yeah.
been genuinely a pleasure speaking to you today, Mike, and thank you so much for inviting us.
Yeah, more than welcome. And thank you for coming on, Helen. And I really do wish you the best for the future success of the business, for helping others, and for the business to continue to grow as you've got the plans to.
Lovely. Thank you very much.